Hello, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here with Maryland Climate Tech Plus. I'm Jen Dewees, president of the Maryland Center for Construction Education and Innovation, or MCCEI for short. Today, I want to talk to you about something that sits quietly underneath every climate and housing goal in Maryland, something that we talk about far less than funding, policy, or technology, and that is our workforce infrastructure. My central argument is simple. If homes are healthcare, then the people who repair, retrofit, and rebuild these homes are essential healthcare workers. But Maryland hasn't yet built the system that allows that workforce to operate at the same scale our climate and housing needs require. Today's presentation is about what that system needs to look like and why Maryland is uniquely positioned right now to build it. So before we get started, and before we dive into the challenge itself, let me briefly explain who MCCI is and the vantage point that we bring to this conversation. MCCI is Maryland's statewide nonprofit focused on the construction workforce ecosystem. We are not a training provider. We are not a contractor. Instead, we are the systems level organization that works across industry, across education, across workforce development, across government, across nonprofits, and across community partners. Our job is to make the construction workforce ecosystem function as a coordinated system instead of a collection of disconnected programs. And our work includes expanding apprenticeships and youth workforce programs, supporting employers, strengthening CTE and college pathways and partnerships, analyzing construction workforce data, championing equity and diversity in the industry, and leading system-level initiatives like the Maryland Apprenticeship Connector and Baltimore Modular. Because everything we do is about alignment, not just one-off programs, we have a unique perspective on how climate, housing, and construction must work together if Maryland wants scalable results. Here's what we're going to walk through today. We're going to talk about why this moment matters for Maryland, the implementation gap, homes as healthcare, what workforce infrastructure actually is, Maryland's apprenticeships investments, why apprenticeships matter for climate housing, coordination challenges, Baltimore Modular and systems learning, what climate leaders like yourselves can do next after this presentation, and why all this matters for health equity and resilience. This conversation is building intentionally, each section set up at the next, but by the end, my goal is for you to see the climate housing challenge through a workforce infrastructure lens. So why does this matter now? Maryland is in a moment of extraordinary opportunity and also a moment of enormous risk. We're investing heavily in climate resilience, building decarbonization, healthy housing, disaster mitigation, indoor air quality, energy affordability, and heat resilience. The need is overwhelming. The funding exists. The political will is there. Research is here. The community need could not be more clear. Yet, outcomes on the ground are incredibly inconsistent. Some neighborhoods get improvements quickly, others wait years. Some homes receive high-quality work, others get a patchwork of disconnected fixes. And this isn't because of a lack of motivation or interest, it's because we have an implementation gap, and that gap is the workforce system gap. Across Maryland, we have hundreds of programs, climate initiatives, housing rehab programs, energy efficiency grants, asthma interventions, electrification incentives, and workforce training efforts. But all of these efforts depend on one thing: people with the right skills, in the right numbers, coordinated in the right ways, doing the right work at the right time. And without that structure, Maryland's climate and housing goals will remain out of reach, no matter how much funding we put in. This is the core issue: a lack of workforce infrastructure, not a lack of workforce enthusiasm. When we talk about homes as healthcare, it's not a metaphor, it's literal. Most of the chronic health issues Maryland families face, asthma, mold exposure, unstable indoor temperatures, heat stress, energy burden. I don't have to list all of them because you all know these things, all stem from the condition of the building in which they live or work. And buildings can only be fixed by people with very specific skills: HVAC techs, weatherization crews, solar installers, energy auditors, insulators, carpenters, electricians, plumbers, and the project managers who coordinate them all. And if we want health outcomes, we must produce consistent building outcomes. And if we want consistent building outcomes, we must build the workforce infrastructure that supports them. Now, what you all may not know is that across the nation, and in Maryland specifically, we do have a workforce gap. We have, yes, 630,000 open positions in America right now, and it's going to get worse because 40% of our existing workforce is due to retire by 2030. So when I say training is not workforce and our workforce is our biggest gap, it's because the numbers don't lie. So here's a common misunderstanding. We just need more training programs, right? Training is essential, but it's not enough. You can train the best HVAC techs in the world, but if the weatherization team seals the home before the electrician upgrades the panel, the retrofit fails. Training produces individuals. Workforce infrastructure produces systems. Right now, Maryland has excellent training providers, but we do not have yet the alignment needed to support climate goals. The workforce infrastructure is made up of 6 interconnected components. We have shared competency models. We have regional employer networks, workforce navigators and intermediaries, cross-agency coordination, data and continuous improvement, and then finally that shared identity, the climate retrofit workforce. Think of it like a backbone. When the backbone is strong, everything else rests on it. But when the backbone is weak or missing, the entire system collapses under its own weight. And Maryland now has an opportunity to build this backbone, but not from scratch. We already have many of the pieces in place. We have something many states lack here in Maryland. We have, like we said, strong climate commitments. We have major funding streams. We have both academic and community partners. We have a thriving construction sector. We also have modular and offsite momentum and a collaborative culture. But we also have something else, major statewide investments in apprenticeships, which are perfectly aligned with the talent needed of climate housing. And to understand why this matters, we need to take about 30 seconds to define what an apprenticeship actually is, so we're all on the same page. An apprenticeship, let me tell you exactly what they are, because most people think that they're just job training and they're not, right? So apprenticeships are paid jobs where workers learn through structured employer design training over 1 to 4 years. Some of them are even up to 5. They combine real work experience with classroom training. And most importantly, they're based on standardized competencies and employer validation. Apprenticeships create consistent skills, predictable career ladders, and workers who improve year over year. This state makes them ideal for climate housing where quality, safety, and sequencing matter. When we have these, specifically in the construction industry alone, I would say probably about 90% of the thousands of apprenticeships that we have in the state of Maryland, most of them are in the built environment. So when I say the infrastructure is there, it's there. We have not just regular apprenticeships, but we also have all kinds of work-based learning coordinating happening at high school level, as well as pre-apprenticeship opportunities and workforce organizations. So the training is there. It's the connectivity of them that is missing. And Maryland realizes that, right? So we've actually, as a state, made 2 major policy investments that support climate workforce development. Most recently is the Registered Apprenticeship Investments for a Stronger Economy, or RAISE Act, that was became law last year under the Moore administration. It strengthens and expands registered apprenticeships across the state. It supports employer participation. It modernizes program design and allows Maryland to create new climate-focused pathways if we want to, like electrification technicians, healthy home assessors, heat pump specialists, and retrofit technicians. The wonderful part about the RAISE Act is that the government understands that it costs money for employers to train people properly. And the RAISE Act has incentive in there to help support employees. If you hire a adult apprentice, it is a $3,000 stipend for that employee. If you hire a youth level apprentice, someone who's still in high school, it's a $7,500 investment. And that leads me to our next piece of legislation and investment. It's the blueprint for Maryland's future. Now, the blueprint for Maryland's future is an overarching goal to help revamp education in the state of Maryland, but one of the pillars is around college and career readiness. And that pillar makes apprenticeship a high school graduation pathway. For the first time in the state of Maryland, we're not just focusing on those college-bound pathways. Students can complete youth apprenticeships in high school and move directly into registered apprenticeships or skilled trade careers. But honestly, apprenticeships in the blueprint for Maryland's future are beyond just the skilled trades. It's any kind of career. You can be a teacher apprentice, you could be a healthcare apprentice. There's a million. We're going to focus just on the skilled trades for this. So together, these two investments and these two policies position Maryland to build a climate workforce pipeline that begins early and supports long-term employer-driven career development. So why apprenticeships matter for climate housing? Apprenticeships unlock five essential elements for a climate housing workforce. We have predictable, standardized skills, the foundation of consistent quality. We have hands-on training tied to real buildings. They're learning in real-world conditions, not in an elaborate classroom. You have long-term employer investment. Employers help shape the workforce that they need today and tomorrow. And we have regional consistency across Maryland. It's the ultimate outcome of a strong system. People are being trained the same in Allegheny County as they are in Baltimore City. And this is why apprenticeships are a perfect tool for climate and housing outcomes. They create both quality and scale. But even with these strong investments, Maryland will still face major coordination challenges. Let me give you one example. A weatherization team seals a home. An HVAC contractor sizes the system based on the original infiltration rate. And an indoor air quality nonprofit comes in at the end and finds the system is improperly balanced. None of the teams were wrong. The system wasn't aligned. The same issue appears constantly across Maryland. It slows down projects, reduces quality, increases costs, and erodes community trust. One place where Maryland got to see this challenge clearly is through Baltimore Modular, which is MCCI co-founded with architect Christina Long of Vertical AE. BMOD isn't just a modular housing initiative. It's a systems learning project about the barriers, sequencing, workforce roles, regulations, logistics, and coordination required to bring new construction methods to scale. And here's what BMOD is teaching us right now. The construction workforce is not the barrier, the system around them is. Regulatory silos slow innovation. Offsite construction requires clear scopes, sequencing, quality control, and cross-training. Strong intermediaries are essential to this work, and coordinated construction directly improves equity and delivery. BMOD is a microcosm of Maryland's high climate housing challenge. So what do we do about this? Here are 4 practical steps Maryland can take. Number 1, I would treat our workforce infrastructure as a core climate strategy, not an afterthought. If we don't have the people to make the changes, nothing's going to get done. The entire construction industry loves to talk about how AI is not going to take our jobs, and that's because a computer can't fix a home. Fund and support backbone intermediary roles. Without these organizations working at the infrastructure, everyone's working siloed and it won't work as a system. We want to align workforce outcomes with both housing and public health outcomes as well, because honestly, without that workforce, we're not going to hit either our housing or our health goals. And create a recognizable identity for the climate retrofit workforce. When people can see the sector can scale. And finally, why does this matter today? This is not just a workforce or construction conversation. It's about people and about health and safety and resilience. If we want seniors to age in place, if we want families living in healthier homes, if we want children breathing easier, if we want communities protected from heat, flooding, and energy burden, if we want housing equity and climate resilience, then we must build the workforce system that makes these outcomes possible. Climate resilience is fundamentally a construction workforce challenge, and construction workforce capability is a public health outcome. Thank you so much for being here, for your leadership in supporting Maryland's climate goals. If we build the workforce infrastructure Maryland needs, the backbone that connects training, employers, climate goals, and community needs, we can become the national model for climate housing implementation. I would love to collaborate with anyone working in this space. Please feel free to connect with me afterwards, and thank you again for your time.
Absolutely. Jen, great job. Great job. Thank you so much. Do you have a few minutes for me to ask you a few
Of
questions?
course. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, and you can keep your contact information up on the screen so people can reach out. So what brings you to this workforce development space? Talk a little bit about your history and how you got here.
Yeah. So I fell into the construction industry by accident. I remember being a junior in high school. I was going to an all-girls Catholic high school outside of Philly and literally like sitting with a career catalog in front of me and picking a major based on my personal interests, right? This was the 90s, so there was no such thing as like assessments or anything like that. So I went into communications, had a minor in sociology, and then ended up working at Whiting Turner when I graduated, like in their marketing department. But it was when I was there that I really started to fall in love with the construction industry and got an opportunity to work, as a project manager for a different general contractor over the years. And during that time, I joined the National Association of Women in Construction. And when I was in that organization, employers were constantly coming to me when I was chapter president and saying, "Hey, we want to diversify our workforce. We want more women to work for us." BGE was one of our founding orgs that helped us with this work, and they kept saying, "Hey, we need help." And I was like, "Man." Thinking about my own pathway to the construction industry and talking to all the other women that I knew in this industry, most of us did not intend on ending up in the construction industry. So I
Hmm.
realized it wasn't because we did lacked an aptitude, it's just we didn't know the opportunity existed. So I started doing a lot of volunteer work with MCCI, and got the opportunity to apply for the executive director role when the first ED was retiring to Michigan, and I haven't looked back. And honestly, it has realized that something that I've was passionate about as a volunteer has now become like my life's mission is how do I make not just more people want to be in the construction industry, but how do I help the construction industry realize how we want people to be, how do we keep them once they come here? Because there are many, many amazing opportunities in this industry, but there's definitely some room for growth on how we run it.
So how do you do that in an industry that's the least digitized, declining in productivity, and has a strong resistance to change? How do you do that? What type of barriers are you needing to overcome?
Gosh, yeah. So I think we are, at the precipice for a need for change. I mentioned earlier, 40% of our workforce is about to retire.
Hmm.
And with that, I think a lot of the people that might have kept us from changing, right?
Mm.
And no, no knock, this is an amazing industry and we have done amazing things. And without the construction industry, literally the world would not be what it
That's
is,
right.
right?
That's right.
But I do think that business as usual is not going to carry us further and is not going to get not only the workforce we need, but we're not going to meet any of the climate goals that are
Hmm.
necessary to keep living on this earth.
Hmm.
I have been really pleasantly surprised by a lot of the conversations I've been having lately by folks that realize like we have to make a change in this
Hmm.
industry.
Hmm. Hmm.
And yeah, there are going to be people that don't change, but they're not those that don't adapt fail, right? So
Right.
I
Right.
think I think it's going to happen, but it does require people to think at systems level changes.
Well, the last McKinsey report that I read said that for every five workers that are quote unquote graying out of the construction
Mhm.
industry, there's like one person to replace them. Has that stat changed
So
post-COVID, or is it still?
the I haven't seen that the stat is changed yet, but I think I'm seeing the tides are about to change.
Mm.
So for the first time in the last 40 years, enrollment in college is down.
Hmm. Hmm.
and apprenticeship numbers are soaring.
Hmm.
And this is not an anti-college, MCCI is not anti-college. We absolutely love our four-year and post-secondary partners. And there are absolutely needs, like we need people that go to college. But we also know that Gen Z really cares about skills-based learning. If they're going to go to college, they want it to be a practical type background. And we're seeing the same. Our union partners and the ABCs of the world and our merit shop are all telling us their apprenticeship enrollments are through the roof. Folks are realizing that, hey, you actually can make really great money doing this, but also really impact the world in which we live, which I think, has been a best kept secret of this industry for a really long time, is the positive community impact we can have.
What would you say from a maybe a social media communications perspective? Like, how's the industry, like what's working when it comes to communicating with disconnected youth? I think we've got some 20, 30,000 here in Baltimore alone and a much larger number in the state. Like it's digging a ditch isn't like sexy, but you can still make six figures without a college, without the burden of college debt, right? So how are
Yeah.
you communicating the fact that these are really good paying jobs without the burden of a four-year institution and the debt that sometimes can come along with that?
Yeah, so at MCCI, we have a couple initiatives that we are working on that we call like kind of career exploration initiatives. So one of them is a brand we have called Build Your Path. We started off with a guidebook that goes, we print about 30,000 copies of them every year, every 2 years rather, and they go into all the high schools in the state of Maryland. And we just started sending them to middle schools because we
Hmm.
know that especially when some young women, that need to hear the earlier, the sooner that they can pursue this pathway. Um, we also create a both a video series and a podcast series under the same pathway where we talk to people about their careers in the industry and how they got there, and we try and feature some we still feature, electricians and plumbers and HVAC, but we also want to feature like the virtual design and construction person or the
Hmm.
safety manager or an energy auditor and those types of careers that maybe somebody is not automatically assuming is a construction career or even knows it's a pathway. Because realize that the biggest gap is the opportunity and the knowledge of the opportunity. That's where the gap lies.
Yeah.
And then we have career exploration events. So our biggest is called Construction Career Day, and we run three of them a year. We'll be adding a fourth one, but we do one in Baltimore, one in Frederick, and one down in Bowie, and then we'll be adding an Eastern Shore. We get 1,000 high school students at a time to do a hands-on career fair, and it's run by employers, unions, universities, other training organizations, workforce providers, and they'll come out and the kids will actually get to try, you know, a piece of heavy equipment, or they'll weld, or they'll put on some VR headset and see that this industry is something that they can do and it's not scary, right? And while it is wonderful for the kids to do, we also see a real change in the employers and seeing that these kids are engaged, that they are capable, and they don't have their head down on the phone because we don't let them keep their phones out during the event either. So that really helps. And I think it's really helping change minds on both ends because I still hear employers that say nobody wants to work. And I'm like, well, that's not true. People want to work. Maybe they just don't want to work the way we have been making them work.
Right. Right.
And I'm not saying there needs to be a major overhaul to the way we work in the industry. I think there just needs to be tweaks on if we have a more human-centered approach as an industry as opposed to profit-centered, then I think we will still hit the profit goals, but with a happier, healthier workforce.
Yeah, and I think that when you talked about virtual design to construction and building information modeling, and VR and AI and augmented reality even, you're talking about adding a level of gamification to
Yeah.
the industry, which I think can definitely get some of our younger folks excited. I know my son, went to Towson, graduated from Towson, and even while he was in school, he said he wanted to be an influencer. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not sure how that's going to quite work out, but it's actually working out extremely well for him. He's
Wow.
doing very well with his business. Shout out to Charm Empires, based here in Baltimore. And so, I think making that connection with the younger folks is definitely going to be required. So, talk to me a little bit about training certifications, maybe wraparound services. Do you provide, transportation for people to be able to get to some of these training
Yeah.
sites, or kind of how does that work?
Yeah, so traditionally the construction industry is a pretty hard industry to get into if you don't have things like a driver's license or reliable transportation, because the nature of the work is that you build where it's being built, and that job site could be anywhere. It's also a really exciting part of the industry is that you get to see the world, right? And as much of the world as you want to, depending on who you work for. I do think, and that's part of our Baltimore modular work, is that more and more contractors are doing work offsite, which means, not in the final location.
Mhm.
So they're doing them in prefab shops. So maybe they're doing a bunch of the prep work
Mhm.
for an HVAC contractor. They'll build as much as they can,
Mhm.
as many runs as they can, so then they
Mhm.
just put them into place when they get them job
Mhm.
site. But what we're really seeing in other parts of the world and that we're really pushing for here in Maryland is, you know, industrializing the entire approach, especially around the housing and the vacant housing in Baltimore City. There is absolutely no way, no matter how many workforce programs there are out there, that we will ever build the homes fast enough. Because every time one home gets unvacated, another one is vacated in the city, right? So without a mass scale and industrialized effort to this, but the best part, so it's not only will it help with that, but we will need less people to do the actual offsite work. Which is good, but there's also plenty of training opportunities to upskill folks on, how to build a house to passive standards or
Mhm.
there's just so many training opportunities that we see out there. But the best part is that working in the same place every day helps remove the barrier to transportation that exists with the construction workforce, but also a lot of the other barriers. It's safer because you're usually building at like counter height, right? So you're not climbing ladders.
68 degrees all year
Yes,
round.
you're inside. There's no weather. Like there's just so many reasons why building off-site is more cushy, obviously, than building on-site. But there's just, there's a million reasons why it's better for the worker, but also for the better for the business. So we're really pushing for that. There are plenty of contractors that are doing that already,
Mhm.
but just not at scale for the housing in the state of Maryland.
Well, I think that's what's
Yeah,
exciting about being more modular,
yeah,
and bringing in that layer of industrialized
yeah.
construction and project management. I think is great. My last question before I let you go, you mentioned in one of your slides aligning workforce, housing, and public health outcomes. You were speaking to my heart. Whenever I'm in a room with somebody who's in the real estate kind of construction industry, because especially with our Maryland, for those that aren't aware, has the most aggressive climate law in the country. It's called the Maryland Climate Solutions Now Act, otherwise known as Building Energy Performance Standards. And all of our buildings, 35,000 square feet or more, need to be net zero by 2040, right? And in these rooms of energy efficiency, sustainability, resiliency, greenhouse gas reduction, all are needed, but rarely, if ever, is the health and wellness of the building occupant ever part of that conversation. And so,
Mm,
we tend to be the ones that are always bringing that to the bear because, we go in properties that are, LEED certified or net zero, have all the environmental certifications, but when you bring an air quality monitor inside, the air quality is actually very poor, and the building is
yeah.
not performing as designed. And so, I appreciate the fact that you added that layer of public health to housing, whether it's multifamily, whether it's residential, whether it's condo, because I think it's very much needed, because we're so much focused on energy reduction, which is critical. But I think there needs to be a balance between, ASHRAE, engineering standards and a public health sector. So I really appreciate you mentioning that, and I really appreciate you championing that as well.
For sure. And honestly, we're even talking about it even when it comes to um, the mental health of the people that are in that space as well. We currently have a partnership with the Kennedy Krieger Institute where we're talking about neurodiversity in the built
Hmm.
environment and also just all of the sensory needs that humans have
Sure.
in a workplace, in their home, whatever. And I think neurodivergence is a spectrum that I don't know that there really is a neurotypical person. We
Mhm.
all have some kind of sensitivity. So for some, I have asthma, right? So it could be that I'm very sensitive to mold in the air
Mhm.
or
Okay.
humidity or whatever, but also I also have ADHD. So I could also be sensitive to the background noise because of how the building has been designed. So I think that when I say how, and that's something we've been trying to impress upon the industry as well, is that safety and health are not just physical, it's also mental and emotional as well.
Right, right. Wow, Jen, this has been awesome. This is exactly what we needed. I definitely appreciate your thought leadership here and your subject matter expertise. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that you want folks to know before we close out?
Now, I just really I'm grateful to talk to a new group of folks about what we're doing here at MCCI, and just check out our website and our social. We're very active on LinkedIn, so check us out there. And there's a million more things that we're working on here.
Awesome. All right, Jen, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. Take care, everyone.